In a post-apocalyptic world, a former policeman is captured by a bizarre cult and must join a group of fugitives, facing a race across the desert in search of survival. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Mad Max: Fury Road. From 2015, after years of wars over oil and other fuels, the human population has been drastically reduced and almost the entire surface of the planet has become chaotic, forcing people to form groups to fight for survival. But as time went by, the groups became more and more closed and the humans lost their sanity, to the point of behaving like wild animals. To prevent this from happening, an ex-cop called Max decides to live alone in the desert, facing everything and everyone that crosses his path. While traveling through the arid terrain, Max realizes that he is being followed by Immortal Joe's gang and begins to flee in his interceptor. But even though he is a skilled pilot, he is outnumbered and soon has his car hit by the marauders, overturning several times. Even so, Max manages to survive and is captured by Joe's men, who shave his head and start tattooing him, making him official property of the group and turning him into a walking blood bag. Meanwhile, Immortal Joe comes out of his chambers and announces that he will send his war rig to bring fuel from the village and ammunition from the bullet farm, with his daughter Imperator Furiosa leading the war boys, his elite soldiers. After an extremely manipulative speech, the convoy begins its journey towards the gas town, but in the middle of the journey, Furiosa leaves the road and starts driving east without telling anyone. In the Citadel, one of the watchmen notices that she has gone off course and warns Immortan that she is heading into hostile territory. Wondering what's going on, the mutant boss runs to his wives and realizes that his favorite wives have been taken away by his own daughter. To recover the women, Immortan summons all the war boys to go after the Imperator, including Nux, one of the most loyal soldiers who is using Max as his blood bag. Even though he's wounded, Nux doesn't hesitate to help in the chase and ties the ex-cop to the front of his car, binding him with chains while a hose slowly drains Max's blood. With his men assembled, Immortal Joe begins the chase while firing flares, calling for reinforcements from both the bullet farm and the gas town. At the sight of the smoke, Furiosa's group becomes alert and begins to wonder what is going on, but the Imperator refuses to give any more details. Along the way, a rival group known as the Buzzards spot the war rig and start chasing it, prompting the first mate to suggest turning around and surrounding them with the help of Immortan's group. Knowing it would be dangerous, Furiosa decides to fight alone and orders her men to attack with everything they have. But before they can act, they fall into a trap that destroys one of the cars and breaks up the formation. Although they manage to dodge, the rest of the group is hit by the spikes that destroy the motorcycles and try to shred the tires of the war rig. But since it's a fortress on wheels, the truck doesn't suffer any damage and Furiosa's army can strike back, throwing explosive spears that destroy the pursuer. As Immortan's army approaches, even more enemies appear and begin a major confrontation with the Imperator's group, slaughtering several spearmen quite easily. Ahead of the others, Nux finally catches up with Furiosa and helps her deal with the last of the spikes, but the girl drives the war rig into a sandstorm just as he tries to get close. At that moment, the first mate finally realizes that they are betraying Immortan and confronts Furiosa, forcing her to knock him out of the vehicle. To the side, Nux finally gets close enough and starts aiming at the Imperator, who strikes back by throwing the truck at him. As a result, the thorns of the war rig tear the tire of the car and Nux orders the spearman to tie his blood bag to the back to serve as a counterweight, but while he is being dragged, Max manages to knock the bald man down and starts advancing towards the pilot, who locks himself inside the car. At this point, they finally enter the sandstorm and the ex-cop has to hold on tight to avoid falling out of the vehicle. As they pass through the hurricane in the center of the storm, Nux agrees to sacrifice himself for Immortan and begins to douse his own car with fuel. But Max realizes that he is about to commit a self-destructive attack and does everything he can to stop him, smashing the rear windshield and getting into a fight with the man. While battling it out, they end up being hit by the furious woman and are involved in a very high-speed accident, leaving the vehicle completely destroyed. After the sandstorm, Max wakes up practically unharmed and removes the hose that is draining his blood, but as he is still bound by the chains, he walks over to Nux and tries to rip his arm off with a shotgun blast, only for the gun to fail. In the distance, Max sees that the war rig has stopped and begins to carry Nux's body there, using the shotgun to force the women to give him water. While he's hydrating, he sees one of the girls taking off her bizarre belt and asks for the pliers so he can cut the chain, but Max gets distracted and Furiosa takes the opportunity to go all out on him, stealing the shotgun and shooting him in the head. As the gun fails again, the two begin to wrestle while Immortan's wives pull the chain to get in his way, but as Furiosa runs to get a pistol hidden in the truck, Nux wakes up and jumps on top of her, allowing Max to get the gun. Just then, the Imperator appears behind Max and begins to fight over the pistol, almost hitting him in the face. While Nux is immobilized by the others, the policeman continues to fight with Furiosa until he manages to overpower her and put the gun to her head, finally winning the dispute. Excited, Nux says that they will be rewarded for capturing them all alive, but Max doesn't seem to care and asks him to cut the chain. Finally free, he takes the war rig and starts driving away before Immortan arrives, but the truck has a safety lock that prevents him from driving more than a kilometer without the correct sequence, forcing Max to take them along if he wants to escape. With no options left, he allows the Imperator to drive the war rig and continues the journey to the Green Valley, a place inhabited only by women and which serves as a refuge for runaways. But while she's talking about the place, Nux climbs into the truck and hides, waiting for an opportunity to attack. During the journey, the truck begins to sway and Max decides to see what's going on, but while he's investigating the tanks, Nux sneaks into the cab of the truck and is easily beaten by the women, being thrown out of the war rig soon after. As they approach the gorge, Furiosa reveals that she has negotiated with some men to help her escape in exchange for the fuel tank they are towing, but knowing that she has many more pursuers than agreed, she predicts that something could go wrong and asks Max to stay hidden and ready to escape. Once in the gorge, the Imperator gets out of the truck and says she'll release the Gallon, asking them to drop the rocks after they've passed, but as Immortan's convoy approaches, the woman realizes that there won't be time to end the negotiation and shouts for Max to start driving, running under the truck. Nevertheless, the bandits blow up the rocks blocking Immortan's path and go after the fuel alone, throwing a grenade that sets the hood of the war rig on fire. Prevented from proceeding, Immortan Joe puts his best men into a monster truck and drives over the rocks with Nux, ordering his men to blow up the rocks and clear the passage once he has reached the other side. Hundreds of meters further on, the group of bikers starts jumping from one side to the other, throwing various explosives that increase the fire even more, but Furiosa manages to contain the damage by activating the hydraulic system that lowers the bumper, causing a large amount of sand to fly up and extinguish the flames. To beat back the attack, Max and the Imperator start firing in the direction of the jumpers and manage to take down several along the way. Even so, they don't give up and light a stick of dynamite to throw into the cab, but Furiosa shoots a flare in the biker's face and he ends up dropping the explosive that detonates under the secondary tank, causing it to come loose from the truck and explode in Immortan's car. Completely insane, Rictus, Joe's eldest son, takes a flamethrower and tries to set fire to the truck's tank, but as his wives are still inside, Immortan orders him to stop and draws his pistol to shoot Furiosa. At that moment, Splendid opens the door and enters in front of the Imperator of her own free will, serving as a human shield so that the gorilla can shoot her own father. Wanting to make his leader proud, Nux asks for permission to invade the truck and finish off Furiosa himself, but when he jumps into the war rig, the chain on his arm gets caught and he almost falls himself, causing Immortan to lose faith in him. Out of patience, the villain speeds up the monster truck and finally overtakes the targets, allowing Rictus to fire the harpoon that hits the dashboard of the war rig, crushing Max's hand between the steering wheel. To save him, Splendid gets out of the moving vehicle and uses the pliers to cut the chain, allowing Furiosa to put a griffin wrench on the steering so that Max can continue driving the truck. While they're working on it, they come close to a rock that slams into the door of the vehicle, almost hitting Immortan's favorite wife, but when she tries to get back into the truck, her feet end up slipping and Splendid has to hold onto the door. After so much damage, the hinge is already weak and ends up giving way under the girl's weight, knocking her onto the sandy road and causing her to be run over by Immortan's vehicle, which flips over at high speed. Believing that she may still be alive, the other wives try to convince Max to turn around to save her, but knowing that this is extremely unlikely, Furiosa decides that they should continue towards the Green Valley. With the engine overheating and various other problems, the traitorous Imperator gets out of the truck and starts making repairs on the move while Capable offers to keep watch, finding Nux in a fetal position in the back of the vehicle. Curious, the girl asks what happened and he replies that Immortan will never forgive him, because it was his blood bag that caused Splendid's perishment. To calm him down, Capable lies down next to Nux and spends the day listening to him vent, but decides not to tell anyone about the intruder's presence. When it gets dark, Max continues driving through the desert until they reach a kind of sand marsh, where they get bogged down and take the opportunity to plant grenades in the ground. While the policeman does this, the women remove the jammed wheels and they can finally continue their journey, gaining distance while Immortan's vehicle explodes, stuck in the mud. Impatient, the farmer, leader of the bullet farm, decides to go ahead alone with his peacekeeper, which, because it has the chassis of a battle tank, won't bog down at all. A few kilometers further on, the war rig gets stuck for the second time and they have to find a way to break free before the enemies arrive. With the farmer approaching, Max takes out his sniper and starts aiming in the direction of the enemy, but as he only has one round left, Furiosa takes over and fires one last shot that hits the peacekeeper's headlight in order to help. Nux comes out of hiding and tries to speed up the car, saying that they are a few meters from higher ground and less muddy, but since they can't move the truck, he has the idea of attaching the winch to the tree ahead and using it to tow the vehicle out of the mud. Unable to see, the farmer blinds his eyes and starts shooting in the direction of the group without fear of hitting Immortan's wives, forcing the women to run in front of the truck while Furiosa tries to help by pushing the vehicle. This way, they finally manage to get off the ground and can continue, but as the engine is overheating and they are running out of supplies, Max decides to stop and make a trap while the rest of the group cools the radiator. Not knowing if he'll make it back alive, Furiosa is repairing the truck when she hears a huge explosion right behind them. Apprehensive, she starts aiming towards the horizon while she waits for someone to appear, and is extremely relieved to see that Max has returned with a lot of loot, including ammunition and a new steering wheel for his war rig. So they spend the night driving until they get out of the swamp and approach what should be the Green Valley, but all they find there is a woman on top of a tower asking for help. Knowing it's a trap, Furiosa gets out of the truck on her own and reveals that she lived in the Green Valley as a child, but was kidnapped along with her mother when she was still young. Upon hearing this, the woman emits a voice signal that summons all the others to meet again. After explaining how she was taken by Immortan, Furiosa says that she came from the Citadel looking for a new home, but the women reveal that they have already passed through the Green Valley, which is now nothing more than a swamp. Not knowing what to do or where to go, Furiosa spends the day thinking about her next move and decides that they will look for a place with fertile land so that they can plant the seeds of the Green Valley. After talking to all the elders, Furiosa decides to continue heading east and try to cross the salt desert with the motorcycles, saying that with the fuel in the war rig, they will be able to drive for at least 160 days. Finally, she invites Max to leave with the group and he decides to continue traveling alone, saying that it's a mistake to hope. As soon as dawn breaks, the women head east and Max watches them disappear over the horizon, but as the group moves away, the ex-cop has a rather risky idea and decides to go after them to ask for help. According to him, driving for 160 days in the desert is extremely dangerous and there is no guarantee that they will find anything, so the best option would be to return to the Citadel. Max's plan is to return exactly the way they came and lure Immortan's men into the gorge, where they will disengage the fuel tank and blow up all the enemies, allowing them to take the Citadel quite easily, as Joe's main followers are with him. Even though it's extremely risky, the women like the plan and furiously decide to accept the mission, leading everyone back to the truck. Soon after leaving the swamp, Immortan Joe and his men are resting when they spot the war rig returning to the Citadel, beginning the final chase. Using Max's interceptor, the war boys approach and start pouring fuel into the blower, trying to gain enough acceleration to overtake the truck. Knowing that they will puncture the tire if they succeed, Nux gets out of the truck and starts sucking diesel from inside the engine to spit into the blower, greatly increasing the RPM of the war rig. However, the interceptor is much lighter and soon manages to overtake them, throwing thorns that puncture the truck's tires. At that moment, two of the valley's matriarchs grab a motorcycle and manage to shoot the driver of the interceptor, leaving him behind, but because of the extreme effort, the first engine of the war rig stops working and the second is about to explode, forcing them to slow down. To solve the problem, Max asks Nux to repair engine 1 while he prepares the tank to disengage, but while they are busy, Immortan Joe's men approach and start firing harpoons that attach to the back of the truck, forcing the second engine even further. As soon as he hears this, Max leaves one of the old ones to unhook and hangs onto the back of the tank to cut the harpoon chains. Outside the truck, the women on the motorcycle try to destroy one of the vehicles with the spear and end up being knocked to the desert floor. With Immortan speeding towards them, one of the women picks up her rifle and starts firing at the man, who ends up escaping unharmed thanks to the armored glass. With blood in his eyes, Joe rushes at the girl, who throws herself to the ground to avoid the collision, but just as she gets up, the leader of the gas town gets behind the wheel of another truck and hits her at top speed, causing her to lose her life instantly. Just then, a group of war boys approaches and fires a harpoon that hits the cab of the war rig, removing half the roof. At the same time, Max finishes cutting the chains and starts walking back to his seat, but more enemies approach and swing on suspended rods to climb onto the truck, slowing down the policeman who has to fight off the invaders. Taking advantage of the hole in the cab, Immortan's other soldiers throw a smoke grenade into the truck and tie a noose around the former Imperator's neck, forcing the elderly woman in the co-pilot's seat to stick her head out to help her. Without the little lady seeing, another war boy takes the gun out of her hands and cuts her neck with a chainsaw. Just then, one of Joe's men hides near the hitch and takes advantage of a moment when Max is distracted to throw a dart that passes through his hand and hits him square in the forehead, almost causing him to faint. Not satisfied, the invader reloads his crossbow and tries to hit the former Imperator, but she manages to be quicker and throws a knife that catches in the enemy's shoulder, causing him to fall backwards and hang from the underside of the truck. From atop the tank, Max regains his senses and removes the dart from his forehead, returning to the fight as if nothing had happened, but he tries to fight two at once and almost gets knocked off the war rig. In order to save him, Furiosa does everything she can to hold her friend back with her mechanical arm, but while she's distracted, the fool manages to climb back up and drives a stake through the Imperator's hip, seriously injuring her. As soon as the women have pushed the fool out, Nux finally finishes fixing engine 1 and gets out from under the war rig, kicking Max towards the truck where the man-eater is. In the vehicle, the ex-cop manages to take down the gunman and knock out the leader of the gas town with a kick, taking over the wheel of the burning truck. As soon as he hears about Furiosa's condition, Max jumps into the war rig and ends up being captured by one of the men on the rods who tries to throw him into the sand, but even though he's wounded, the policeman manages to knock the enemy down and land on the vehicle carrying the musicians from Immortal's band. At this point, they finally reach the canyon and it's only a matter of time before they reach the final part of the plan, but as Immortal Joe's Gigahorse is ahead, they still have one last enemy to deal with before they take over the Citadel. To end things once and for all, Furiosa leaves Nux at the wheel and assigns Gigahorse to deal with Rictus personally. Seeing the danger she's in, Max jumps from the band's vehicle to the war rig and throws a skull at Immortal's son's head, getting into a fight with the big man while Furiosa advances towards the man who captured her. Realizing that they need help, Nux crashes into the back of the Gigahorse and knocks the Imperator out of the car. But despite her injuries, the woman manages to attach her mechanical arm to the villain's mask and throw the object into the rear wheel, causing Immortal Joe to have his face blown off. In the back of the Gigahorse, Max is still fighting Rictus when one of the elders fires a shotgun blast at the gas tank on his back, distracting the man and allowing the Interceptor's owner to finally knock out the enemy. With that, most of the plan is finalized and everyone heads to Gigahorse to continue their journey, but when Nux goes to brake the accelerator to also get out of the truck, Rictus wakes up and tries to capture Capable, forcing the former warboy to slow down the truck to prevent his beloved from being caught. To save everyone, Nux decides to sacrifice himself and purposely overturns the truck as soon as his friends pass the entrance to the canyon, causing a huge accident that wipes out Immortal's last men. Still, not everything is solved and Furiosa is slowly dying thanks to the air that is invading her chest and crushing her lungs, but Max knows exactly what to do and opens a hole in her thorax, allowing the air to escape and the internal pressure to decrease. Even so, Furiosa is weak and Max decides to serve as a blood bag once again, supplying all the necessary fluid to the Imperator's veins. After some more traveling, they finally arrive at the Citadel and the ex-cop shows them Immortal Joe's destroyed body, making everyone celebrate at finally getting rid of the general. But while Furiosa is being crowned as the new leader, Max walks through the crowd, leaving the Citadel and deciding to follow his own journey alone. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.